Have you heard the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover? But that's what people do, right? We judge everything by outward appearances. In my experience, a great album cover can make or break the decision on whether I buy an album. So go on a journey with me as we look at some great album cover designs and talk about why I believe that you need a personal designer for your album artwork. This is Judged by the Cover. Hey guys, welcome back to the Judged by the Cover podcast. I'm Josh.
Hey, I'm Phil.
And we are kind of back to the original kind of setup of the show. Really excited about that. And today we are talking about a very iconic album cover. And should we tell them what it is, Phil?
I would, man. Cause
I mean, they probably already know because of the thumbnail or the name of the episode.
Yeah.
So today we are talking about possibly one of the most iconic album covers of all time, which is The Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd.
Classic.
Classic, for sure. Now, keen eye viewers, if you are watching the video, check us out on YouTube. Just search for the Judged by the Cover podcast. You can actually watch us if you want to see our faces. But you will probably say that the album cover that's sitting in front of us, that is not Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah, totally not.
It's totally not. So when we first started talking about doing this podcast, it was right after I saw Mammoth in concert. Was super stoked to be able to see him for the second time. So Mammoth 2 tour was awesome. Shout out to my boy Michael Walker for the tickets, for hooking us up, getting us in. It was a great show. And it kind of got me thinking, and I've got a little bit of a hot take, Phil, that I think that Wolfgang Van Halen, for those who don't know who Mammoth is, that's Eddie Van Halen's son.
Yeah.
I think he is more talented than his father.
Holy, how dare you?
No. Before you guys shut us off and run away.
I'm going to shut you off. Are you out of your gourd?
I might be.
That's like blasphemy.
It sounds like blasphemy, but track with me for a little bit. And please forgive me. So as far as I know, Eddie Van Halen was a legend on guitar. He totally revolutionized how the guitar was played. But I don't know that Eddie played any other instruments. Now, I probably should have done a little bit of research. The only thing that I kind of have to retrack a little bit is I want to say that I think he actually started out on the drums, but he was better on guitar.
Because I'm a liner note geek, I do believe there was some classical music training in the family, in the Van Halen family. Whether he started on piano and his brother obviously was on another instrument, but was he the bass? His brother played bass or drums.
I think it was drums.
Yeah, I think it was drums.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I'm not a big look. I love all the hits. I love the whole vibe of Van Halen. So my apologies if you're a big Van Halen fan and I just miffed being figuring out who's playing what instrument. But I think they've got classical training backgrounds.
But I guess the reason why I kind of think that he is more talented than his dad is because he plays every single instrument that you hear on the album. So if there's keys in it, he's playing it. If it's guitar, if it's bass, it's drums. And one of the things that kind of solidified it for me, two things. First one was there was a video going around kind of when this tour started, and it was an interview, and somebody was talking to the drummer of Mammoth, and they were asking him about a part in the song. And he's like, "You need to get Wolfie in here." He's like, "I can't play it correctly." So they bring him in, and he plays it, and he's freaking amazing. The other thing was halfway through the show, they kind of take a little bit of break. The band walks off the stage, and he comes out with an acoustic guitar. And there's a song called Distance that he wrote about his dad, and he sang that song acoustic. And his vocals, because when it's just you and a guitar, there's not much that you can hide behind when it comes to your vocals.
Yeah.
And his vocals are fantastic.
I wish I saw that show.
So you should have, Phil.
I was close.
I had a ticket for you.
I know, I was close.
But I will say this. Will Wolfgang Van Halen have the same legacy or the same impact in music that his father did? I think time will only tell on that one.
Yeah.
My guess is possibly no.
because we're in a different era.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're on a major label. I don't even know. He's probably on, what is he on? Maybe
BMG.
Well, that's Bertelsen Music Group. That's huge. So that's big guns. But his dad, Van Halen, they were on majors, man. I mean, major labels, and the business was different back then.
Yeah.
We're not in this streaming age back in the day. You would just go to the record store and buy the album, and there's only one Van Halen. I don't know. It's a different game now. It's so saturated in the market.
Yeah.
But I think it's amazing that he's keeping his father's legacy alive. And I love it when you see sons and daughters of legacy musicians carry the torch,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I 100% agree. And that's just more of a hot take and, I guess clickbait. But no, he's awesome. I love him. If you have a chance to see Mammoth, you got to. It's a must-go-to show. His band is amazing. Go see them. I think his tour just wrapped up, but I know he's going to be out in support with the band Creed this fall.
Out. That is a huge opportunity.
Yeah.
I just had a total brain, you know what, but I don't know, man. Going out on the road with Creed, that's pretty cool because that's a 90s act, and Wolfgang wasn't really 90s. When did Wolfgang do the first album?
Oh, I mean, I think the original or Mammoth 1 came out 21 or 21 or 22, something like that.
Very fresh, very. How old? Do you know how old? What would you? Is he your age?
I think he's close to my age.
Yeah,
we can find out pretty quick.
One thing about you kind of doing the whole oh, he's better than his father. It makes me want to get more and more into these albums, like Mammoth 1 and Mammoth 2, to listen, because who else plays everything usually is Lenny Kravitz.
Mm-hmm.
So Lenny, a lot of these guys and gals will just go in the studio by themselves, like Prince, put the whole record together, playing all the instruments, and then you hire your session players, you get your tour personnel together. But I mean, it makes me want to get into it more.
I would highly recommend it. Mammoth 1 is awesome. I love it the most, but I really appreciate this album more now that I've actually spent some time with it.
The t-shirt logo even looks like a video game. It almost looks like Nintendo.
Nintendo, it does. And I don't know for sure, but there's got to be some influence there. So he is 33 years old.
How old are you?
I'm 35.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he's a young buck.
Yeah, so he's a young guy. This probably has some Nintendo. He's probably a Nintendo guy.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure. Don't take that as gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that was my hot take. Let us know what you think. You can either drop me an email. That's info@jwcreates.com. On the or on my website, on the blog post for this show, you can leave a comment there. Or if you're watching on YouTube, drop those comments there. You can also hit us up at jwcreates.com. I think that's all the links. Anywho, that's enough on Mammoth. Let's take a quick break. Let's thank some sponsors of today's show, and we will get into Dark Side of the Moon.
I can't wait.
Did you know that Judged by the Cover is brought to you by JW Creates? JW Creates is your graphic design source, specializing in cover art design, logos, websites, and so much more. As a musician myself, I fell in love with album covers, and this fueled a passion to visually tell stories and promote branding through the art of graphic design. To learn more, see some of my work, or if you're interested in connecting with me, go to jwcreates.com. Judged by the Cover is proud to be a part of the Pod Nougat Network. If you are a fellow podcaster looking for a partner to help give you the tools to make your show the best it can be, or just interested in connecting with other podcasters in the Chattanooga area, make sure to follow Pod Nougat Network on Facebook and Instagram, or learn more at chatpod.com. So that's chat with 2 T's, pod.com. All right, and we are back, and we now have Dark Side of the Moon sitting in front of us. So to kind of kick it off, I was going to throw it over to Phil. He's going to give us a little bit of behind the scenes info about, what was happening, with the band and all that kind of around the album, and then we'll talk about the design, and
Right.
there's some cool stuff there to talk about. So, Phil, what do you got for us?
I think, before this record materialized, there was original band member named Sid Barrett, and he was suffering from mental illness. And I don't know how it was bad. From what from what I've read, it was bad to the point where the band was witnessing him decline, and ultimately they had to fire him from the band. And he was a huge, like, I think he brought in like these long solos and this big kind of journey, taking you on a journey through these songs. And they hired David Gilmour to replace him. And we all know David Gilmour is a fantastic guitar player, and he's a very handsome man, especially when he was young. He had the long hair, and his songwriting is incredible. So David Gilmour came in almost as like a surgeon, and he kind of tightened up their song structure, shortened the lengths of songs, made the solos more succinct, and I think kind of, and this probably happens with a lot of these bands, is you bring on a new band member, and all of a sudden you're energized. It's like, wow, sadly we don't have to deal, we miss our old comrade, let's say Sid Barrett, and the guy's suffering, but now they have a fresh start again with David Gilmour, and David comes in here and they start writing, or Roger Waters has this concept, this vision for their next album, which became this in front of us.
Yeah, so this album came out in 1973.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah.
And I've never been a huge Pink Floyd fan. I just don't think I've ever gotten Pink Floyd.
Yeah. I had a girlfriend in high school give me The Wall LP, and it was like, I'm really a new wave guy. But I got into it, and when we were kids, it was like mandatory that we all watch the film The Wall. And when you watch The Wall, you realize these are post World War II children, just like the Who. They've gone through World War II as children, which was hell because they bombed the living crap out of London. And they shoved all the kids on trains and shipped them out to the countryside to save them. So these kids, can you imagine growing up like that? So, this band are these children, and I think it's extraordinary. Like they're telling this story, and when you watch The Wall, it's all about World War II and the hell, and you can see why this band's so screwed up.
But it made for great art, I guess.
Big time. And that's the psychology. You weren't singing about mental health issues or really talking about drug use. That this was cutting edge back then for this out. That's a big deal. Like, that's like, whoa.
Yeah.
This band. So I wanted pop music. I love new wave, sugary pop music.
Light music, right?
Yeah. And then she gives me The Wall. I'm like, wow, this is just terrible. It's brutal.
So, Dark Side of the Moon, even if you don't know this album or even think that you've heard, because you probably have heard something off this album just because of how prolific it was.
Yeah.
You have seen the imagery from this album cover.
You can go to Target and buy the t-shirt now.
Yeah. So, and one of the articles I was reading, they talked about how even at this time, that you could probably walk past Roger Waters on the street and not know who he was for, the average person.
Yeah.
But they know what this is.
Oh yeah.
So, iconic. So it's a prism. So we've got kind of a triangle prism, and you've got light coming in from like the right to the left-hand side, and you've got this spectrum of color coming out the other side. Very simple on a black background, but there's something really significant that kind of just resonates, I think, with a lot of people, even though they probably don't know what this album sounds like. I feel like people resonate with that imagery.
Yeah. And that this graphic. It's so prolific in pop culture. We all know what it is. You know, even my youngest daughter has a T-shirt. Maybe my eldest daughter has the T-shirt too. Like, um, there's like kind of it's trendy to have old '70s band T-shirts
Yeah.
now for the
Yeah.
younger folks out there. But I don't know, man. It's like the imagery is it's so strong, and just like that, you can once you get into the music and then you start to look at the art, you're like, oh man, you can maybe this beam, the single white line going into the prism is just like the individual band members, and then this spectrum comes out when they get together,
Mm.
playing together
Okay.
and writing together,
Yeah.
and the music manifests being shot through this prism. And that's what you get, man. When you hear this music, it's almost like it's like a colorful palette of
Yeah.
sound.
This may be getting ahead of myself, but you know what I've always how I've always looked at it is that I've always kind of viewed it I'm trying to think of the best way to put it. I'm just going to say
Just say it.
is that the music itself is kind of just the white line.
Yeah, okay.
And
Yeah.
I feel like you have to be on a substance
Oh,
of some
Lord.
sort to
Right.
fully understand.
Like some kind of filter. You have to go through some kind of yes.
That's how I've always kind of looked at it. Maybe it's just because I've always associated Pink Floyd as like a
But
stoner band, or the
they
people
were doing those psychedelics,
Yeah.
back then. Yeah, that's an interest. Yeah,
I know it's not correct, but that's how I've always looked at it.
But that was look. You had come out of Woodstock. You've come out of the '60s.
Yeah.
And they started this in '72. They released it in '73. Even the Beatles had their tripping, Lucy in the Sky with diamonds. Everyone's doing LSD. That was just the times.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's cool is the band has never really come out and had any explanation as to what this really means.
But they did want something simple. Didn't you read that too?
Yeah.
Like they wanted something simple.
Yeah. So what's funny, and this kind of leads into the designer of this album cover. So the designers of this cover is a group called Hypnosis. Very prolific designers of album covers. And honestly, they revolutionized what album covers looked like. And kind of the funny part of that story is they were known for these like surreal, very art driven kind of covers.
Yeah.
And when they came in to have a meeting with the band, I forget which one of them it is. I could probably find it in my notes here. They were like, we don't want any of that psychedelic crazy stuff. Like we want something simple and classy and I don't know if they used the term colorful. I could find it in here because I did save it in my notes. But they're just like they're like, we don't want crazy, we want simple. And that was really the only parameters they gave.
And that was from the band.
That was from the band.
Meanwhile, the label didn't want anything to do with these designers because they had done previous work, and they're just like, these guys suck.
Yeah, I think you might be referring to the one that has a cow on it.
Could be.
And maybe through the magic of editing, I'll throw that up on the screen. Because that was one. And one thing that was kind of revolutionary about it that kind of transferred over to this is that didn't have the band name or an album name on it. Right. It was literally just a picture of a cow.
Yeah.
And the label hated it. They were like, it's got to have text. It's got to have...
How do you market it?
And so the same thing with this. When they presented this option, clean, no text or anything like that, the label was like, it's got to have... People got to know who it is.
Mm-hmm. And
both the band and the designers were like, no, this is it. Some other funny kind of backstory. So this, I think, idea came up pretty kind of quickly for them. But I think they presented... Was it 12 ideas? Is that what you had saw?
The designers gave him seven ideas. 7 choices.
Yeah, so 7 choices. And there was one, they didn't explain all of them. And obviously I don't think there's any photos of these, but one of them supposedly had this like Silver Surfer Marvel type character on the cover. And one of the 2 members of Hypnosis was really excited about that one. Yeah. And then when the band is like, this is it.
This is the one.
This is perfect. Yeah. Like he was kind of like deflated because he had this like really cool creative cover, but like they wanted the simple cover.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to take your lumps, as a designer. Like, okay, but then that's why you present your client with multiple options too, right?
Yeah. It's always good to have more options, especially in something like this where these guys were just known for like really creative, sometimes out of this world stuff. Uh, you know, they could come up with something crazy and they'd be like, I don't know what that is. I don't
Yeah.
want that. So yeah, you definitely got to have some options, but kind of in the way that these guys operate with their cover
And I
design.
love how like the music is obviously the most important thing, but
Yeah.
even the album is the graphic
Mm,
design is the most important thing.
yeah.
It's almost they're equal.
Yeah.
So you've created this musical work, and now you're
Yep.
working with your designers to create the cover that's gonna be out there in the world
Yep.
to attract people to
Yeah.
this music. And it's epic. Like it speaks volumes. It and it's just, what, two-dimensional, one-dimensional.
Yeah. One dimensional, really. And that's one thing that they brought up. There was an interview with one of the members of the band, and I should have done a better job with notes and having
You
actually
really
who
should have.
I know.
Yes.
Gosh dang, man, who hired this guy?
Yeah.
Um, but they were talking about like, is this so popular because of how popular music was? Because this album, I forget how many times platinum this album went.
900 times
Yeah,
multi-plat. It's
it's
one of the biggest selling records, I think, ever.
Yeah. So they made the comment like, is this imagery so powerful because we sold so many albums, or is it because the imagery is so powerful that also caused people to flock to it um and really just like fall in love with this imagery?
Well, I think it's popular because the songs are fantastic songwriting,
Yeah.
and it was again like people weren't used. You've come out of the 50s. No one's doing the Elvis tunes anymore that were all
Yeah.
written by what Lieber and Stoller or something like that.
Yeah.
You've gone through Woodstock, and now you're in the 70s, and these are like, this is like a Radiohead band for that era. They're
Wow.
right.
That's a interesting way to
Yeah,
put it.
they're
Yeah.
writing like really personal, intimate
Yeah.
lyrics, and very high concept stuff. Like when OK Computer came out, none of us had heard stuff like radio. None of us had heard Radiohead, and
Right.
we heard
Right.
OK Computer, and we're like, holy crap, I'm done. I'm just not gonna ever make another piece of music because these guys are incredible.
Yeah.
So that's what these were, the Radioheads of the early 70s.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I wouldn't have thought of it that way, but that is a very interesting take on. They were the Radiohead.
And they were doing that quadraphonic mixing where you hear stuff, the
Yeah.
sound swirling around you. And,
Yeah.
so much of the stuff in the 50s, it was pretty much mono. Like, when did stereo come in?
Yeah.
I mean,
who knows?
we have to, that's a good thought. Like, when did stereo come in? Probably sometime in the 60s. Could be earlier. Could be like you had high fidelity, but I don't want to get in the
Right.
weeds with this stuff.
Yeah. Right.
But that was the other thing, how this was mixed. They had to have every band member all hands on deck when they were mixing this with Alan Parsons, who produced it. It was so massive that everyone had to take a fader to achieve this sound of footsteps walking around you, or the money changing, the
Yeah.
coins for the song, Money, which was like a B-side maybe, or not a B-side, but it was one of the singles, Us
Yeah.
and Them, and Money. But yeah, I mean, it's just crazy work.
Yeah.
Huge work.
And what's crazy, and this just goes to show that I'm definitely not. I was never a Pink Floyd fan. There's four guys in this band. When you listen to like the soundscape of these albums, how do four guys do all that?
Yeah.
It's pretty wild. And I will say that I, after actually like sitting down and listening through this album, it's still not my cup of tea. There was actually one song that I actually really liked. But
Can you tell me which one it was?
it was track list.
I can open this.
But I don't Any Color You Like, which is just a jam, actually.
Oh, okay.
But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But where was I going? But the soundscape in this
Yeah.
whole album, I didn't realize like how much effort they went into like crafting like this heartbeat sound that
Yeah.
goes throughout the album. Which, if you want to turn that around,
And
the
they used
album,
a real kick drum. They tuned a kick drum to get that heartbeat sound.
and so a cool touch was putting the heartbeat with the spectrum of colors
Yeah.
on the inner cover.
Yeah.
Um, one, I, we're kind of going back a little
Cutting
bit
edge,
here.
by the way, because we're so used to seeing waveforms now.
Yeah.
And to have like an EKG, I don't know, it's just cool. Mind blown.
What?
Like early Forerunners. Like
Wow.
this thing holds up, dude.
Yeah. That's great.
I know.
The light. So you got the colors going through. The one thing the artist did say, they really wanted to portray the fact that Pink Floyd shows were a lot about like the lights.
Mhm.
The light show was huge. And so that was one of the factors why they wanted to have this color coming through.
Yeah.
That's just one other little note.
I kind of remember that because I was a little tiny boy when this album came out, but
Yeah.
when I got into high school, I know that friends of mine who were into Floyd and would go to the shows. It was all about the light show. It was almost like
Yeah.
going to a Dead show. You had to be like totally invested.
Yeah.
Like, this is
Like total experience.
yeah, total immersion into the world. I was gonna say also that I read that this is the first time they printed the lyrics on the inner sleeve because they were so confident of a lot of it's, I guess, Roger Waters' lyrics.
Yeah.
I mean, you can read the liner notes. I mean, they all have a hand in it.
Yeah.
But it's the first time they were that confident with these lyrics, and they wanted lyrics that were not abstract. They were really writing literally. And so they printed them.
Huh. That's interesting. That's a cool little songwriting
Yeah.
tidbit I didn't even pick up. That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the whole kind of concept kind of goes through the physical album itself, but I just love the simplicity of it. The fact that it's mostly black and white, but you got this real splash of color.
Mhm.
Makes it really interesting.
You know what? I like the balance of it. Like, when I
Ooh.
knew that we were going to
Yeah.
do this, five songs on the front
Yep.
and then 5 songs on the other side. Perfect balance. And when I listened to this album back to back, I definitely listened twice at different sittings, usually late at night with my headphones, all the way through the whole album. And I was like, you know what? It's the perfect length. Sometimes I'm like, all right, dude, I really love this band, but God, did you have to do 14 songs?
Yeah.
Because like at 3 of them, you didn't need those,
Yeah.
And who am I? Who am I to say? But 10 songs, boom, leave them wanting more.
Yeah,
and that's what they do.
And that's kind of what I felt because I was almost like the opposite. I was like, that's it?
Yeah.
Because I think I am used to
Eclipse.
the 14 to 20. Yeah.
Eclipse is the last song. And when I was like, are we done already?
Yeah.
I was like, what? That was quick.
The one thing that I found very interesting, and I'm pretty sure it's the song Money. And wasn't Money one of the singles?
Yes. Us and Them and Money were the 2 first singles that they pushed out.
It almost doesn't sound like it fits this album.
Yeah. I don't really love the song Money because when it got so much radio play.
Yeah,
and it
radio
still
killed that
does.
song.
Dude, radio just killed. I hear that opener, I'm like, oh, okay, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
But it was cool because he actually recorded those like coins. He poured coins into like a bowl in his wife's pottery studio, and they recorded it. And he tore paper, anything to do with currency.
Yeah,
they tracked it, they looped it, they edited it in this weird like 7/3 time, and it's incredible what they did. But it's like, my goodness, if I hear that song one more time, I'm done.
But yeah, that was the only song that I was just like, it's just in how the album flowed. I'm like, it doesn't fit. But
part of the high concept was they were talking about greed, wealth, stardom, mental health, mental illness. And so, it does make sense to have this song about currency come into play. And it is a great song. I
It
mean, let's
is.
just
It
cut
is.
the
But
crap here, and it is a
but
great
yeah,
song.
I agree with you. It's definitely one of those songs that radio killed.
Yeah, just more. Us and Them, though, that's my favorite.
Yep. That was good.
And that evidently is about depression. Um, and again, breakthrough to be talking about like this stuff. So Us and Them, and then Brain Damage is the next song. I mean, Breathe is the first one. Well, yeah, On the Run, Time, The Great Gig in the Sky, Money, Us and Them, Any Color, Brain Damage, Eclipse. Dude, there's a lot there.
Yeah. Come on. And one final little tidbit on just like the songs themselves, that Any Color You Like, I
Mhm.
guess when they played that song live, because all their songs basically turn into a jam, I guess. But that song, one night it would be like the guy on the piano would have a really long solo on the
Oh,
piano,
cool.
and one night, David Gilmour would have the solo on the guitar and would just rip it up for like 8 minutes straight or something like that. They
Wow.
almost just kind of rotated whoever was kind of feeling it that night. I was like, huh, that's kind of an interesting little tidbit.
I miss in this age of streaming, I do miss like this experience. Like I love
Yeah.
it that you got this at the record store. Like you
Yeah.
ordered this thing.
I did. Shout out to Yellow Racket Records.
Yeah.
Shout out to Ben for ordering this one for me. It is a 50th anniversary, so it's
Yeah.
got the nice, heavy 180 grain vinyl and all that fun stuff. Obviously, an
50th
original would
anniversary.
be awesome, but
Yeah.
I mean,
Is the
either
original
way,
glossy? Because I love the matte finish on this.
I don't know.
Well, I'm gonna have to check. Maybe we can find one. We should like do a little dumpster diving or bin diving.
Bin diving. There it is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I want to dive in a dumpster. I'd dive in a dumpster for this album.
I love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, did you have any other fun tidbits or anything like that on the album itself?
I do love David Gilmour, and then when you get into the Wall, I mean, this is a huge the record that preceded Dark Side of the Moon, I guess, didn't do great commercially. They had a label in the UK called like Harvest, and then Capitol Records, of course, the mammoth Capitol out in LA was their label for US release, or the Americas release.
Yeah.
And it was of the greatest importance that this album be a hit, because the one before wasn't great. I guess Syd Barrett probably had a hand in that, and he was not well.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that.
And that this album just like dominated. They did a press event at a theater in London where they played the album for the music media, for the press corps, and they ran it through these really shitty PA systems, and it sounded like crap. And some of the band members boycotted the event. They're like, "Dude, we're not going. You're playing it through these terrible speakers." But they did the event anyway, and it got rave reviews. There was maybe one or two critics that what are they doing?
Yeah.
But overall, it was just like, you need to listen to this album. I mean, that's the other big change. Like we were talking about Wolfie Van Halen as opposed to his father, Eddie. Those were the opportunities for these legacy acts. They could do a big media day. Now, man, you're just lost in the shuffle with like no one's got an attention span anymore.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to get the press to come in and sit down and do a listening party for Mammoth? I don't think so, unless you're doing freaking Tiny Desk or something like that. And thank goodness for Tiny Desk.
Well, and I think a lot of that, I think your local record stores are trying to bring that back.
In-stores are great.
Yeah.
I loved doing in-stores when I was active with my band. It was such a great way to just like, hey, this is what we got coming out, man.
Yeah.
And you would sell albums that way.
Yeah, so that's, I think there's a glimmer of hope for stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you either have to like grind it out on social media and like try to hit the algorithm and, kill yourself doing videos and stuff like that.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's what new artists have to do.
Yeah.
It just is like, I don't know. You got to be in love with it. You have to be so passionate about it, because if you're not, it's just going to be like, I don't know. You go crazy. You go mad like Syd Barrett.
Yeah. Yeah. So, if you are a young artist or a band or a creative, and you are, looking to, record an album or release something, and you're trying to figure out what to do with your album cover art, your cover art. I think one thing that you can take from this album is simplicity is okay.
Yeah.
Because I mean, this is about as simple as you get when
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to it. Um, uh, I also think that trusting your designer.
Yeah.
So, these guys had worked with hypnosis for a while, so they knew what they were getting. What kind of cracked me up, and there's a documentary, and I need to watch it, and I just found out that it's on like Amazon and stuff like that where you can
Ooh.
rent it. I think when it came out, it was just on like Netflix, or you had to have a
Yeah.
specific streaming service. But there's a documentary about hypnosis called the Circle Squared, I believe is the name of the
I'm
documentary.
gonna watch this thing.
Oh, I need to watch it like tonight,
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah.
And shout out to Scott Simpson, A to Z Radio. He actually sent me that probably a year ago, and I haven't checked it out yet. Sorry, Scott.
Mm,
Um, but ooh.
doesn't matter.
You're
Right where you're supposed to be.
right where I'm supposed to be. No, but trusting your designer. So they had worked with these guys. But there's a story in an article that I read about Led Zeppelin. So Led Zeppelin had seen these guys work for another band, and basically they called him up and said, "Hey, I want to work with you. I'm not going to tell you what my lyrics are. I'm not going to tell you what the album's about. You know what kind of band we are. Just create an album." You know what kind of like faith in like a designer?
That's a lot.
I don't know if that was faith in the designer or, pride or just stupid stuff, but
Yeah.
like I think that as an artist, find somebody that you connect with,
Yeah.
that kind of understands you, understands your vision,
Yeah.
that can lead you through the process. Because these guys probably would have never thought of a prism with
Mm-mm.
light coming through it as the album cover. Album covers of their day had like pictures of the band
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So find somebody that you connect with, somebody that you can trust, and don't be afraid to let the reins loose a little bit.
Yeah. I must have total control.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I was that guy for a long time. Like, it was my baby, and I was so protective of the songs, who I wrote with,
Yeah.
and my concepts. And then I'm like, dude, just relax, bro.
Chill out, man.
And when I trusted my designer and my photographer to come up with their ideas, it made the project so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you are somebody that's looking for a designer, I'd love to hear about your project. I'd love to hear you out.
Reach out to Josh. Come on, man. Just drop him an email or a comment.
Yeah. So that's jwcreates.com/cover art. I think that's right. And then
You're terrible at marketing yourself.
Or
info at JW Creates.
.com.
Info at jwcreates.com.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear your thoughts. What are your thoughts on Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd? Are you a fan? What do you think about the album cover? Let us know. You can also hit us up on social media. That is at JW Creates. So yeah, Phil, this was a lot of fun. This one, I've actually been teasing that we were going to do this album since like the second episode of the Judge by the Cover podcast.
Gosh.
I think I actually said it by name that we were going to do this album.
Finally, you're here.
And finally,
it's a long tease.
Yeah, finally we made it, guys.
It's worth it. I'll go back for a third listen for sure. For sure.
Yeah, 100%.
We should do The Wall next.
Okay.
I don't know, it might be too much Pink Floyd. I'm like Josh. I wasn't a huge Pink Floyd fan. And then there are so many songs. I'm just like, okay, they're amazing.
Well, thank you for hanging out with us.
Thank you, guys.
We've got a really cool podcast that will be dropping very, very shortly after this. I'm thinking that we're going to have 2 drop in June.
Do it.
Because we actually didn't have one drop in May. So 2 drop in June. This one plus another one. It is a pro panel. The first album cover that we talked about, or the first artist, is one that we talked about in that panel as well. And there may be another one that you see on this video that we also talk about. So make sure to be watching for that. I think the next time we do one of these, We will also bring back the near miss segment. I completely dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah,
So you're not getting one this
fun.
time.
Near misses are cool.
Yeah, I really enjoy those. So thank you. We appreciate you. And
thanks for tuning in.
We'll see you on the next one.
See ya.
Proud member of the Podnuga Network.